Good morning, everyone. Welcome to the Covering Race, Uncovering Racism plenary. Since we are a little behind schedule, this is kind of a freestyle panel. So I would like to go ahead and invite my lovely co-panelists up to the front, and we're going to do this conversation style. And these lovely people taking the stage behind me are Wright, Tracy Van Slyke, and Veronica Arreola. I was honored to be asked to help assist in this plenary because new media has played such a role in the way in which I think about race, in the way in which I organize, and more importantly, the way in which I find community. I like to joke often that when I came to the internet, I was just playing around. I was downloading anime, I was playing video games, I wasn't doing a thing for justice, racial justice, gender justice, just hanging out. And yet, in the 10 years from when I started posting on Bolt message boards, I don't know if anybody remembers Bolt.com, so we're old, downloading music and doing mixes, I started realizing the amazing power that we have when we harness the internet. There's amazing power for transformation. There's amazing power for connection. There is an amazing power to be able to speak out against misrepresentation, against racism, against sexism, classism, homophobia, and be heard, and force other people to engage with you just because of the power of the platform that you have acquired yourself. I really appreciate Malkia's work and Chris Rabb's work on the digital divide because it is imperative for those of us who have made our names online, for those of us who are organized online, for those of us who use the online space as a way to continue our narratives and to make sure that our voices are heard, to ensure that the internet does not become closed. But for the moment, let's return to the panel. So I would like to give a special thanks to our sponsors over here at ARC, the people who put on this wonderful conference. Could we please give them a round of applause? Now, I run a site called Racialicious.com. I inherited it from Carmen Van Kerkhove, who many of you may know. And it is an amazing, amazing thing to be able to sit there and say, whew, thank goodness for ColorLines. We had a staff meeting not too long ago where Arturo, who's my site lead, and I were sitting there talking. We're like, okay, we got somebody on Undercovers, we got somebody on the new Nikita reboot, we got somebody on Hawaii 5.0, I'm going to do Afro-modernism, and we're like, wait a minute, there's an election coming up. What are we going to do? ColorLines. So, since they always have our back, I'm happy and amazed to introduce Wright, who is the wonderful executive director of ColorLines magazine. He's also an amazing author and journalist, and he's going to take a few minutes just to talk about the brand new ColorLines and what you can expect from the new site.
Good morning, and thanks for joining us. I'm going to be really quick so that we can get back to the panel. So I can show you some really neat stuff that is coming out of ColorLines in the coming weeks. So I know all of you have been dedicated ColorLines readers for the full 12 years that we have been around. In this summer, we did something really exciting. We went to a fully digital publication. And that is allowing us, I'm going to get my slideshow going here. And that's giving us a whole new world of opportunity that we haven't had to report on what's going on in the world around racial justice. We are there every single day. Wait, I'm going too fast for myself. So this is our brand new homepage, our brand new site, colorlines.com. If you're not there every day, you should be there every day. You should sign up for ColorLines Direct, which an email will send you, letting you know what's going on the site. You can sign up out there at the table outside of the plenary session. We're doing daily news. I'm a disaster up here with this thing. we're doing three main things here. We're coming into the news cycle every single day, so we're not waiting until the end of the month. We're not waiting until halfway through the year to respond when some mess pops up, when they start calling Shirley Sherrod a racist, when they start telling us where mosques can and cannot be built. We're there every single day to respond to it and talk about it, give you not only analysis but facts. which are too often missing. We are committed to long-term investigative reporting alongside that, and I'm going to show you some of that in a minute. And most importantly, we are committed to building a space where we're not just talking at you about what's going on in the world. That's old media. That is the lie of objective media. We reject that. We are building a space where we can give you information and you can take action on it, so that you can actually be changing the world and actually become the participants in society that we all want to be. I give you a couple examples of stuff. I'm going to get there. Give you a couple examples of stuff that we're doing. Well, forget it. We're there we go. Tracy's going to get my back and take over for me. So we're meeting people where they're at a lot of days. Everything is not about a 6,000 word analysis of where we stand on race in America today. Sometimes it's about what people want to talk about right now. Recently, something that's been very, very popular on our site is what Elle magazine did to poor Gabori Sidibe, enlightening her skin when they put her on the cover. Now, this is something that a lot of folks who aren't talking about race, don't have politics around it, actually care about still. And so we were able to do a series of stories on this. And what's most important is it brought in a whole lot of new readers. You can see the Facebook share button there that this item within a couple of days had been shared by thousands of people. And bringing new people into a conversation about race that wasn't there. Because I've already run behind, I'm going to skip ahead a little bit. Alongside doing that kind of pop culture stuff, we're also able to follow real hard journalism in a way that it is often being ignored. So when Johannes Meserly went on trial in Oakland, he actually was on trial in Los Angeles for shooting an unarmed black man in Oakland, we were one of very few national outlets that put a reporter in the courtroom every single day. And so by the end of that, every single day, Julianne Hing, who is sitting out there right now, went down to Los Angeles and chronicled the trial, so that by the end of it, we had a full and complete record of how he ended up with an involuntary manslaughter conviction, and why it made sense and what we need to do in the future to get better justice. We're also committed to, as I said, long-term investigative reporting. I'm gonna preview here for you. You're gonna get an exclusive sneak preview of a big investigation we've got coming out in a couple of weeks about how our deportation pipeline has gotten so out of control. We found a young man who had spent his entire life in Fort Worth, Texas, who was deported over a trifle because he got caught up in this system that has run amok. And we followed him, we tell his story, and we tell his story for the purpose of saying that none of the policies that are on the front burner, none of the reform ideas that are on the front burner in Washington, D.C. right now would have stopped this young man from being deported. So I'm going to shut up and show you a video that will be aired on ColorLines alongside a full written piece very soon. So we'll air that video and publish the story that goes with it in a couple of weeks on ColorLines.com. We urge you to come. We urge you to take action on it. We urge you. So there's simple ways to take action on the site. Sharing is caring. As we've talked about, everybody can be an abolitionist publisher now because of the internet. And so everything we put on there, we encourage people, pick it up, take it, put it on a billboard someplace, put it on your Facebook page, whatever, republish. But alongside that, we're also going to be launching campaigns. And as you've already heard, ColorLines and the Applied Research Center are launching a campaign to get rid of this nasty word illegal. That language is what buttresses the policies that send people like Shahed away. And that is the language that sets this up. And so the first step is to stop with these smears and stop with this what is just hate speech. So we're launching a campaign to get rid of the word illegal. We're going to ask you to do a couple of things. One, on Tuesday, we will launch droptheiword.com. You should come. You should tell everyone you know to come. You should, and most importantly, while you're there, you should sign a pledge to drop the I word yourself. You can do it right now as well from your cell phones. I don't have the number again. Terry, can you hand me the card with the text number so we can quickly say? 69866. You can send a text message right now with the word I word and pledge to drop the I word. You can get that number at the table outside as well. We will show another great video later today about the I word campaign at this afternoon's plenary. So if you don't remember two things. Come to ColorLines every single day. Tell everyone you know to come to ColorLines every single day. And tell everyone you know to go to droptheiword.com this coming Tuesday and pledge to stop using hate speech. Thank you.
All right, and with that, we are going to go into this kind of freestyle panel. I have a wealth of talent on the panel with me. And one of the things that I always like to do is try to understand how people took the path to get to where they are. I always find it kind of an interesting exercise to know someone's origin stories. So I'm going to ask them 3 different questions about who they are, why they do the work that they do, and where they feel as though new media plays into the fight against racism. At the same time, those of you who are in the audience should have cards on your table, is that correct? The cards on the table? Okay. So if you have questions for anyone on the panel or any questions in particular that you'd like to ask, feel free to hand those in. We'll collect those in about 15 or 20 minutes, and then I'll try to put some of those in before we end at 11. And so let's try to keep this going. Panelists, if we could please try to keep everything to about 2 minutes. Okay. All right, so let us start. What led you to this work? And we'll start with Tracy Van Slyke.
Hi, I'm Tracy Van Slyke. Good morning, everyone. Is everyone awake out there? Yes? Yes? Too much partying last night? What led me to this work? Well, it's sort of in my blood. I don't think my parents would have given me another choice. Decades ago, my parents were part of the civil rights movement. My dad was one of the first students to cross the picket line at the University of North Carolina, Chapel Hill, when the janitors were protesting. My mother was at Northwestern. Her college roommate was the first female black student body president, Eva Patterson. Some of you may know her. And I have this amazing picture of my mother crawling through a window, bringing in supplies and a tennis racket, I'm not quite sure on that one, into the students who had shut down Northwestern in protest. So started from there, in that sense, in the fight for social justice and racial justice. And then every day at the table, the dinner table, we talked about politics, and there was always local campaigns that my parents were involved in. And so it was ingrained in me. And then the fight for media, the fight for independent media is something that I believe is so powerful. What ColorLines.com does and others to really report on what's happening on the ground, to really hold those in power accountable, to actually move as many of you as possible to take action in your communities on a national level is just something I'm very passionate about. And so the fight for journalism and independent media is an incredible thing that we should all support and continue to move forward. And I'll stop there to keep it going.
Awesome, thank you, Tracy. And Veronica.
Good morning, everybody. Let me see how I started. I like to say that I'm really a success story for Amnesty International high school chapters. I ran my high school chapter for 3 years, sophomore through senior year, and it was just an amazing experience in learning how to organize and get people to move and come spend an hour after school writing letters to heads of state, pleading them to release people, treat people with humanity. This was during the early 90s, so it was also during the first Iraq War. So that really pushed me to examine where I stood on so many different issues, because most of my fellow students were in support of the war. You know, we were like 14, or like 15, 16 years old, and I was taking a very neutral stance, and they really pushed me on that. Being anti-death penalty at that time was also very unpopular, and I think I perfected my 60-second elevator pitch in high school, being, essentially cornered into lockers. What do you mean you're not for the death penalty? What do you mean you're not supporting the war? And then in college, Destiny found me in my email box. This organization called Women Leaders Online, that's now defunct, had started up after the Republicans took over Congress in '94, and they started an email listserv. And on that listserv, I met Jennifer Posner, who is the executive director for Women in Media News, and she really just opened my entire brain to looking at media through a gender lens, through a race ethnicity lens, learning what it means to have an independent media. I mean, I had never even thought about how the media frames issues and who is behind that framing and what we can do to create our own media to frame the issues the way that we see it just.
Excellent. And Kai, how did you come to this work?
Ideas. I come from a family with a lot of spirited opinions. And I grew up in a lot of shouting matches around ideas. It dawned on me that the one who had the most information could win the argument. And so I got into ideas and going out and getting information in journalism and community-based journalism. So I got a job at 15 working for the Indianapolis Recorder, which is the black community newspaper in Indianapolis. We would put the paper together literally physically with our hands with a glue stick, and you put the copy on the board, and you run a copy of it, and there's your paper. And that was addictive. Creating ideas and putting them into the world is addictive stuff, and I think it's the thing that we need in order to, any community, if it's a movement, if it's a block, if it's a nation, you gotta have a venue for sharing ideas and facts in order for it to function and for people to function in it together. And so that's my animating purpose.
Awesome. One of the things that we definitely wanted to cover in this panel was discussions of media. Our panel is titled New Media, but really it's media that shapes how we see so many different things, how we view the world, what our lenses are on other cultures and other people that are different from us. They normally come from media in messaging. And since so many of us spend time with media, even if you studiously avoid pop culture, which I completely do not do, I'm completely immersed in it, but even if you avoid pop culture, there are still items that are made, books being written, music being performed, things to see and to do that have this lasting impact upon you and who you are and help to frame how you see things in a very different way. I've been playing video games for 20 years. And so ever since I was 6 years old, I started playing video games. And looking at that world evolve, as I grew up and learned to play more things and played much larger epic things like the Final Fantasy series or understanding, The Legend of Zelda and heroism and those ideas, all started to serve me very well when I got into media critique and looking at the way in which we tell stories and stories that stay with us. Lodged in our hearts forever and ever and ever. So I wanted to ask the panelists, what is the most transformative piece of media you've ever seen, written, created, what have you, and how has it impacted you? And we'll go the other way. Let's start with Kai.
Oh, goodness. I know Tracy's got better answers. So I don't know what I've consumed a massive amount of media in the course of even a given day. So I had a hard time coming up with a singular piece, but I think that the most recent transformative piece of media I saw was during 9/11, and GARE produced a series of videos talking about why Muslim Americans are part of the national conversation around 9/11 as opposed to exempt from it or the target of it. And there was one video in particular, we ran it on ColorLines, so it's not just a plug, that showed a first responder who's a Muslim American talking about how it impacted him. And to speak to Malkia's points from this morning, that I know that video circulated widely If not for the internet, it's something that 5 years ago, without YouTube, would have been something that a handful of people saw. And tens of thousands of people saw it, and for me, I saw it and was arrested. And it reminded me of two things. One, the ability to use new media, but also how core storytelling still remains. A good idea and the ability to communicate it through storytelling. And that's what that video did well. And so I don't know if it was transformative, but it was, that day, transformative, a reminder that this is all about storytelling.
Excellent. Veronica.
Wow. It was really hard for me to figure this piece out too. And what I came to realize it was really that those years in college, right after college, when the internet was really in its infancy. And I was, because I was in college, I was online and one of the pioneers, you know. And that, along with being handed my first Ms. Magazine issue, and then my first Bitch Magazine issue, you know, like, people actually did think about pop culture in those ways, the way I did. I wasn't the only person sitting in front of my TV going, what? What does this mean? And then being online and being connected with veteran feminist organizers who had done the work in the 60s. I was the first person to go to college in my family, so I wasn't connected in that way to the legacy of the civil rights movement. And so being connected digitally really was amazing and really transformative.
Cool. Tracy.
All right, I have two parts, and the first part has props, so forgive me. A lot of people that know me know that I work in the new media world. I work with independent media, and I'm on Twitter all the time and on Facebook, and probably sick of seeing me there. I'm at Tracy VS, by the way, if anyone wants to follow. But probably some of the most transformative pieces of media for me are books. How many for you? Raise your hand. Mm-hmm. Yeah. So the first book that I was, literally, you sent this question, and I was like, I don't know how to answer this, and then kept ruminating over it. So the first book, The Blue Sword, young adult science fiction fantasy, incredibly progressive, incredibly feminist book, highly recommend to your children. The second book, I can get it up there, A Taste of Power by Elaine Brown. I don't have it on me because someone borrowed it and didn't return it, but this is a woman who was the first female leader of the Black Panthers. Incredibly transformative book for me. And if you're seeing a pattern here, I really like reading about fictional and non-fictional female heroines. The third book for me is this woman named Martha Gellhorn. She was the first woman female international war correspondent. She also reported on the Great Depression directly to FDR, and she was magnificent. Highly recommend reading about her. And last but not least, while not a book, is highly transformative for any young adolescent girl, Buffy the Vampire Slayer.
It's not just the girls.
Okay.
Hell yeah.
Sorry, that was sexist.
At least not just the biological ones.
Yeah. All right, so on that though, those were transformative pieces of media, and I think it's sometimes really hard to think about, sometimes in recent years, what has been this one transformative thing, because we're like so inundated every day, right? Like, I like to call it filter failure. It's really hard for us to navigate through. Who feels that here? Like, you're like so overwhelmed. But the second part of that for me is what's so transformational is the connections and the networks that are forming online, and how quickly information can be shared. How many of you here are on Twitter? Raise your hands. How many of you are on Facebook? How many of you consider yourselves media producers in some way? Oh, there's got to be more of you, really?
Well, everybody that said they were on Facebook or Twitter.
Yeah, I mean, like, honestly, like, every day, what's so transformative, and we'll talk about this even more, is that every one of you has the power to be media producers, to access the news and information and pop culture in a completely different way, and share it with each other. Whether it's just like passing along to a friend like, haha, this is super funny, to we need to work together to take action on this particular issue. And I think we'll dive into that some more. But for me, that is the transformative moment and the power of both independent media and the need to fight for internet freedom at the same time.
Awesome, and good transition to our third question.
I tried.
Perfect.
Okay.
And at this moment, if you have any questions, please feel free to put your card up, and that someone from the ColorLines team can come by and collect it and try to pass it through to us. We're at, got about 28 minutes. We're doing pretty good. So, one of the things that a lot of us who are in activism, who are agitating for social reform and social change realize is how easily our voices could go from being amplified to completely unheard. And it's painful to think about how much new media has played a role in us connecting with each other and us understanding who other people are and getting the word out and understanding. And to watch and see how, to see the work of, you know, Malika and other people who are really into digital justice and understanding the need for an open internet is how soon this window could close. And how soon we could lose this right that a lot of us right now aren't using to the fullest. So I'd like to ask our panelists, in what ways can media, let's say old and new here, let's go and cast a wide net, old and new media be harnessed to fight racism, particularly in an environment where the internet as we know it, this tool that we have all used to communicate with each other and to connect with each other, is becoming more and more closed so that our voices may not be heard. Tracy.
So a couple of things. I recently co-authored a book called Beyond the Echo Chamber that really sort of starts to lay out how specifically progressive media can take advantage of the internet and these new networking strategies to make an impact on politics. But I think those lessons learned can also be applied to organizing and advocacy work. The first is, as I sort of mentioned before, everyone has different sorts of power now to create the news. That's a really big opportunity to fight against racism. For example, in the book, we talk about Talking Points memo that is a sort of a national political online outlet that works with its community in states all around the country to identify different stories. And those stories get brought together on a national level and given a national platform. For example, does everyone remember here a couple years ago when all these US attorney generals were fired across the country? The mainstream media was sort of skipping that story. And Talking Points memo communicated with its audience. It already had a relationship with its audience to say, wait, here's some connections here. They made it into a national story. They combined it with their own investigative reporting. The mainstream media couldn't ignore it, and a year later, Attorney General Alberto Gonzales had to resign. So, I mean, like, that's just like the power of how you can be involved with independent media to help fight on these issues. The other thing is there's different blogs like Firedog Lake, which, you know, we often get told that we're preaching to the choir, right? We hear that and it's really annoying. Well, what do you think the right's been doing for the last 30 years? So there's an opportunity to assemble the progressive choir online in a whole new way that complements grassroots organizing that's built on trust and relationships and transparency and communication, and really to move people to action. And the third one I like to call is how we can force people and force even media outlets to go beyond pale, male, and stale. I like to shorten that to go beyond PMS. We know both things are very painful as women. I will that specifically for women. And how we need to transform the media environment to think beyond just pale. Beyond the males, and beyond just being very serious all the time. How do we integrate humor and pop culture to really reach into new audiences? I will say there's an incredibly powerful black blogosphere, Racialicious is part of it, where Jenna 6, remember when the Jenna 6, you know, it wasn't the NAACP who helped organize thousands and thousands of people to go down there and protest for those 6 kids. It was the blogs. It was the black blogs. It was radio. It was new media and old media working together to raise the issue that moved people to literally not just sign a petition, but to go down there and have one of the largest civil rights protests that we've had in recent years. So there's some real opportunities with this online environment, both for producing media and for organizing, that's incredibly important to fight racism.
Definitely. Veronica, and we've got so many great questions from the audience.
Okay,
let's do like a minute.
I like to think about the many opportunities we have for bridging communities. One very recent example is that MAC, the cosmetic line, was going to release this new line of makeup, and they were naming it after things in Juarez, Mexico. Because a couple of people had taken a road trip and thought it was just so romantic. And it was just disgustingly racist and awful, and especially what's going on in Juarez with all thousands of women being killed there. And it was the fashion blogs that broke this, because they get the ones who get the scoop on new makeup lines. And I'd like to point out that even though, I think that a lot of progressives may be very serious, and fashion blogs are over there, but it was feminist-minded fashion bloggers like Jessica Wakeman at the Frisky who really broke this story and connected those dots, and then reached out to the serious feminist blogosphere, the serious Latina blogosphere, and made those connections. And I'm not even sure if it even made the mainstream media, because it just blew up in the blogosphere. And MAC first apologized, they was going to donate money, and then they just canceled it. I mean, within, I think, about a month, they completely canceled this amazing new big line that they had invested all this money in because of a fashion blogger. So I like to say, just don't dismiss bridging into communities. You never know who's writing the gossip blogs, and when something's going to happen, and then they really make those connections.
And notably, many of those bloggers did not have politics, said themselves, we didn't have politics, and this got me politicized.
Right, exactly.
Awesome. All right, so we have an amazing amount of talent in the room, so I knew it. That's why I was like, we're not cutting the question session. So, and luckily some of them overlap, so I'm going to collapse some questions into one, and 1 minute responses, so we can try to get to as many as we can in the remaining 20 minutes. Yes. All right. So, one of the questions actually dovetails with the question I was going to pose to the panel, so we'll just do it all together. The question from the audience is, how do we, as communities of color, ensure that social media, like internet, Facebook, and Twitter, do not replace the communal values of face-to-face human connection? So one of the questions that I sent out to everyone and that I was going to ask was, in what ways does new media complicate traditional organizing strategies? As someone who completely works in new media, I recently joined a new program called the Public Media Corps, which goes out into communities that are underserved by traditional internet access and goes to try to build bridges between people, the public media that's supposed to be serving them, and technology, because that can be very intimidating for some people to go in through. So I've kind of gone through and committed to 6 months of my time to do this program, because I believe very strongly that everyone should be empowered to create this type of media and to have these ideals. And at the same time, what it's been teaching me is that internet organizing is amazing, but it can only go so far. We still have to go out, we still have to touch people, we still have to talk to people, we still have to listen to as many people as we can, because everyone's bringing their own perspective. So to the panelists, let's kind of mash that together. We don't want the internet to replace the communal values that we all came up on, but at the same time, what ways does new media complicate organizing strategies, and what considerations are being overlooked? Let's start with Kai.
Well, I'll do something real quick on it, because I'm not an organizer, and I am, despite the fact that I edit a website, am something of a Luddite. So I have always feared technology and social media as well. But what I've learned in my personal life is that this either or divide is nonsense. It's not either or, it's both. It's both online and offline, and they complement each other. The internet and social media are tools, just like the phone is a tool, just like a hammer is a tool. You can use a hammer to beat yourself in the head, or you can use a hammer to build something. And it's the same thing with social media. It can be used to alienate, or it can be used to bring people together offline. And I think it's just how we use it.
Veronica? Good?
That's good.
Let me just say something real quickly. Yeah, I mean, I totally agree with all this, the internet, but I know I come from both a organizing background and sort of a media production background. And I talk to organizers a lot and they're like, I don't know how to do this. I don't have the time and I don't have the capacity. How many of you here feel that? Okay, I get it, I understand. It is something that needs to be supported, both by the staff in your organizations, that you given the time to figure this stuff out, and also frankly by funders. If they care about the impact of your organization, how do you integrate sort of new media into your communications and organizing is something, and that's incredibly important. So this is something that has to be thought about internally within your organization and individually on your own, and as you sort of make the larger case for the impact of your organization. And I think there has to be a lot more support for on-the-ground groups to learn how to take advantage of these technologies and to implement them. And that's all I wanted to say.
Yeah. Yes. And so that rolls really well into two questions, again, that dovetail. Thank you guys for all being on the same wavelength, making my job so much easier. So, one question is, how do we also challenge and shift the way that the web encourages a culture of self-surveillance? Excellent, excellent question. Followed by, to what extent is your, I suppose the whole panel, mine, your enthusiasm for Facebook, okay, that's definitely the panel, tempered by the potential for perversion / need to overtake / abuse information. Media literacy and understanding what's going on, what you are putting out on the internet, who owns what you produce, it should be a key part of any platform. So again, with the Public Media Corps, as I'm going out to communities and we're talking to kids in Anacostia High School, and we're talking to adults at WHUT, and we're talking to people at Parklines, and we're doing all these things in our community, that is ever present at the forefront of our mind, because Facebook and the like, in my space of course, has been used as a way for people to survey the activities and actions, particularly of youth of color, has been used against people and things that they say and do. So while these platforms have tremendous potential for transformative change, they also come with this dark side. Any of the panelists want to weigh in on what we can do to make sure that we are not only embracing this culture of new media and this power of connection, but also looking with both eyes open at the risks in which this plays for organizing and for ourselves.
So I also heard in there self-surveillance, which I took to mean, and maybe I'm wrong, but I took to mean, staring into your navel as opposed to. And so let me hijack at least that part of the question. If
Go for it.
I think it's an absolute concern that it is very easy to use these tools. So we just got through saying everybody's a publisher now. And it's very easy to say that means I can just sit around and talk about myself. And that makes me a publisher. And I think that, first off, consumers are the check against that. I think that self-surveillance is boring and people aren't into it. And I think that, just like if when old media would print ongoing self-referential conversations between a couple of people, we would check out. And to the degree that you're using new media to obsess over yourself, people are going to check out. And so if you want to be a publisher with an audience, then you'll do more than self-surveillance. And I think it's really quite simple. So that stays the same, right? That's an enduring rule for whatever kind of media you're using. In terms of how we prevent it from being a perversion, again, I hear that I think of Andrew Breitbart when I hear that. I'm thinking of that it's also a powerful tool for perverting reality and spreading lies. And I think the way we prevent it from being that is making sure we're on it spreading truth. If a Facebook fan page goes up that is full of a lie about Shirley Sherrod, I mean, that's not how that happened, but say it was. It's very important that there be a Facebook fan page that is very full of truths about Shirley Sherrod. So I think you prevent the perversions by filling it up with truth.
Yeah, I work at UIC, at University of Illinois Chicago, and I work with science and technology students, and I try to weave in media literacy into programming or when I'm just talking to students, because they're young, they've grown up online, but they haven't had, nobody really teaches media literacy in high school. So they know how to use the tools, they know how to find the information, they know how to share it, but they're not, they don't have the critical thinking skills yet on media literacy. And I was there, and so I try to weave that in every once in a while. When they share something, I'll like it, or if they share something that's not cool, I might bring it up to them the next time I see them, talking to them about how they present themselves, how they share things, and the responsibility that comes with being a self-publisher.
I would say that in terms of sort of navel gazing, how bored do you get with people who talk about themselves all the time in person, right? Don't be that person online. At the same time, I do want to encourage you to push yourself a little bit, because once again, the networks, the connections that are being built aren't just because I'm sharing an article, it's because you understand a little bit about my life. I understand a little bit about your life. There's the personal connected with the professional there. But you don't have to tell every single thing. I mean, whatever. I mean, if you're not comfortable sharing something with, someone at the next table over physically, then maybe you shouldn't be putting it online. At the same time, push yourself to think about what aspects of yourself you do want to share, because you can be that much more effective in your work, in your professional life, if you have some sort of personal connections online to people. And that also influences how, if other people are sort of watching you, if you feel like you're being surveilled, although that sounds a little conspiracy theorist, don't put anything up that you don't want people to repeat back to you or be public later on. I would also encourage, Deanna Zant has this wonderful book called Share This. It's on sale over there for anyone that's trying to learn about sort of the world of social networking and how it fits into their personal and professional life. Go pick it up.
And Deanna, who's on our board, has a great anecdote about this, where she says, the woman is probably the most aggressive tweeter around, right? I mean, she dominates the internet. And
she's back there yelling.
Where are you? And she gave me a great anecdote when we were our staff was asking about this and the concern for being surveilled and how much of yourself is out there. She pointed out how, you think you know everything about me, but you've never heard anything about my dating life. Because I control the conversation. I'm sorry to share your story. I control the conversation, and I control what I'm putting out there, and you think you're getting everything, but you're not. And that's an important lesson.
Excellent points. I just wanted to make one last quick point on that question, that people should definitely educate themselves about what the internet is being used for by other institutions and by the federal government as you are growing and exploring. But I do believe that the power that we get from this pushback, which again, as we've been saying all conference, may not be available for that much longer. One of my favorite anecdotes from Racialicious is that we were able to force a response from Newsweek after they published this piece on the future of feminism. Now that was not our intent necessarily, we were blowing off steam. So we were just talking to say, oh no, here we go. All the black guys are men again, all the blacks are men, all the women are white, and some of us have to be brave or else we're going to kick somebody in the face. So we wrote this long piece that was just me and my deputy editor just kind of talking back and forth, and we didn't expect it really to go anywhere except with our regular readers who have these existing frustrations with feminism and how it's represented. What we didn't expect was for it to get retweeted by people like Rachel Simmons and Roger Ebert and Melissa Harris Lacewell, for it to go super far, and for the people at Newsweek to call us up and say, oh, we have to do this, and to actually go back and amend their blog and say, oh, and here's this other perspective from these people who don't like us, but but we were able to force that response. So remember that there's tremendous powers in this world, there's tremendous risk, as usual, with anything that's worth having, but to make sure we get it. All right, so we are at 10 minutes, and we have 3 more great questions and 2 announcements. So, Let's rock it out. Next one, let's please speak to the current and proposed regulation of media, particularly online media, and the positive or negative implications for racial and social justice work. What should we be supporting and opposing in terms of regulation? And, let's yes. Tracy's at the bit. Oh, wait, 1 second though. And this couples with another one. What ask would we make to the FCC commissioner in order for her to follow through with her stated dedication for bridging the digital divide, since there were no commitments stated? So,
Yes, we got some journalists.
There are some organizers in the room. Look at that.
Told you. Crowdsourcing, old school style. Go ahead, Tracy.
Does anyone else want to take it first?
Please do.
Okay, I mean, look, I actually think Malkia did an amazing job of summing that one up, and I'm not quite sure if I need to repeat it. A couple of major things. Yes, net neutrality, terrible 2 words, an incredibly important policy that we all need to get behind. Also known as internet freedom. Support for universal broadband. Across the country, connecting rural and poor urban neighborhoods, incredibly important. And the other thing we need to start thinking about is mobile. Because how people are accessing and using their phones, whether it's text messaging, their smartphones, is going to be critically important. If you want to learn more about media policy, which I highly encourage you to do, raise your hand, table right here. You need to go talk to this table. Okay, I mean, I don't want to bore people, like, not bore them, but not articulate it as well as it could be articulated that they can do it. But those are some of the major issues. Google, something that we use every single day, is coming out and trying to sort of negotiate what the future of the internet's going to look like, and they've sort of reversed on their commitments. We need to continue to push them. We need to continue to push the telecommunications corporations that have hundreds of millions of dollars that they can drop in a hat. And so what we have, though, is people power to respond, and so we really need to mobilize around that.
Cool. All right. Veronica, we have another question from the audience. Practical tools. What advice do you have for social justice groups that are reevaluating their online presence?
Oh, wow. Okay, when organizations come to me and ask me, what do we do? We want to go online. And we go to lunch and we talk, and I say, you just need to start somewhere. And I usually do say start at Facebook, start at Twitter, because they're very popular. But you don't have to do everything, because nobody can do everything. Just get to know a couple of tools and then maybe add a few more to your toolbox. I definitely always say to get Deanna's book and read up on the different styles. But I also say that you have to have somebody who's going to be dedicated to that. Who's going to be the leader, not the person who's going to do it all, but the leader. It can't be just the summer intern. It can't be just somebody's 25% of their time. You really need to have a dedicated person if you're really going to have a great social media presence in terms of organizing and getting your message out, but also to make that part of the work environment, the organization's environment, that everyone is going to be part of that. You're not going to have your organization or everyone. No one can go on Facebook during the day except for our organizer, because as Tracy was saying earlier, and we've mentioned before, you have to show a little bit of your personal side for people to trust you, to understand that the messages that you're sending out are trustworthy, and that you're the person to know. I'm also an avid tweeter and Facebooker, and I'm always sharing stories, and occasionally I have a couple of friends who are like, you're just crazy on those things. But then I have way more people who are like, thank you, because I really dig and find some stories that people probably are not stumbling across, but they're following me, they're friending me on Facebook, and they're just getting so much information. And so organizations can definitely do that and get their word out there.
Excellent. Second part of the question will go to Kai. How can groups connect with online outlets and communications to distribute research and policy analysis?
How can you connect with online organizations to distribute them? Well,
Yes.
I mean, first off, I may actually be the wrong person to answer the question, but I think that one of the things that is very helpful when you talk about this overload, Tracy mentioned earlier, there's a million organizations out there with their own websites that you can go to try to get their information. But one of the things, there's a whole host of tools that can aggregate every day the stuff that everybody's publishing that you can then go through and republish yourself. And I actually would rather one of you guys talk about what some of those tools are, because I use them badly. But from Google Reader on down, there's a bunch of stuff that you can do that will scour the world for you to get information that you can then respread. Maybe one of you guys can throw some of them out.
Or I can do it.
Or you can go ahead. You go.
All right, cool. So, since I run a blog that a lot of people are always like, how do I get something on Racialicious? Here are the things that will help you if you are an organization and you have some excellent data points, you have this thing that's not covered correctly, whatnot. One, look at the people who have covered similar articles to you and similar articles that you would like to have written about your stuff in the past. Find out their names, send them some information. If they are a freelance writer, like I was until about 6 months ago, if you're a freelance writer, you are always looking for good tips. And if you have some really great, pertinent information, this writer will go and champion it to the relationships and the networks they already have. If you send it directly to a magazine and you don't have a relationship with them, a lot of times they shoot you down. It's the same way for writers. If you send it to someone who does have a relationship, it just goes up the pipeline that much faster. So try to have that happen. Two, if you are working with bloggers, in particularly because so many of us are not paid. Racialicious is a volunteer-run organization. We do daily content, but we are not funded. And so when people are going, hey, we have this tip, there's this awesome thing happening, a lot of times the problem is that we have 250 other equally awesome things that someone has sent to us. So be available to help us out. Pull out the key policy points that you want to hit. Pull out that key statistic. Offer to write a guest post. Offer to appear on a podcast. Can you help us get that content out there? Third, make sure that you have something that's sellable for us. And when I say sellable, I mean that if you're promoting an art gallery exhibit, there was this exact thing happened to me. There was this great art exhibit. I really wanted to promote it. I thought it was awesome. They had no images for me of anything in the exhibit, and the exhibit's in Britain. I can't help you, I'm sorry. Like, I need at least one picture to put at the top of the post to say this exhibit is happening. So please think about your multimedia, make a little video, add some images, do something, and then distribute it. Finally, look at the people who are connected on Twitter, who gets a lot of retweets, who gets a lot of pickup and things like that for that, and target them. Not in a way of, hey, I have something and I need you to do this right now because it's important, but rather, I think I respect you. I think that you have a lot of interesting thoughts, a lot of things to say. I would love it if you would take a look at this and create a relationship that goes beyond just need and more toward a, we are all in this other type collective. So that would be my thoughts.
And I was gonna say that definitely focusing on the people's reach in terms of Facebook and Twitter and all those things, not so many the number of people who are following them or friends, because they could have a gazillion people following them, but if what they're saying just goes out there and just drops, you don't want to work with them. I mean, they're not worth it. But if you want, you have a few people, but they're always being passed on, then those are the people you want to work with.
I'm sorry, and I apologize, I misunderstood the question actually. But really, all of that is true, and a very, very important piece of this, whatever it is, saying, hey, everybody's ignoring this and they should be paying attention to it is insufficient. You need to figure out how what it is you want to talk about connects with what people are talking about today. So if today's news is that Barack Obama is speaking to back-to-school kids, just to pull something out of my head, then whatever you're talking about, figure out how it's relevant to that and put it in that frame, because there is so much information out there every day. And this is whether you're pitching a journalist or you're posting it on Facebook. You will get so much more traction if it is connected to what's going on right now, as opposed to saying, hey, you're ignoring this.
Definitely. All right, so they're about to get the hook on us. We're at time, and I had two announcements. There is one question left on Dinesh D'Souza.
Oh, goodness.
And that's going to take longer than we have. So I will give this card to the panelists, and then we have our respective platforms for which to answer your question. And then we have just two very quick announcements.
Suffice to say he's a fool.
Yes. Who you telling? But so we have two quick announcements at the end of the panel. The first one is please, please, please encourage people to vote in the upcoming elections, okay? Our votes do matter, our votes do count, particularly at midterm elections. and this is a situation I ran to in 2008, and I was completely schooled, so I appreciate those who took the time to school me. If you are an anarchist and you do not believe in voting, you do not believe in state-sponsored things, then please go forth and encourage people to become informed citizens. It's a very different idea from having an informed reason for not voting and an apathetic reason for not voting. So even if you are not involved in our political process, please engage people who should be and let them know, okay, well, either you have a principled stance here or you need to be at the ballot box. Figure that out. Secondly, that there will be a book signing directly after this panel for 3 of our esteemed colleagues, I suppose? Yes, our esteemed colleagues. We have Chris Rabb signing Invisible Capital. We have Tracy Van Slyke with her book Beyond the Echo Chamber that she co-wrote with Jessica Clark. And Rinku Sen. Rinku, which book are you promoting? The Accidental American? All of them. All of Rinku's fabulous books. Okay? There's just all kind of fabulousness out there. So please make sure that after the panel that you go ahead and make your way over to the bookstore, I believe that's where you guys will be.
Yes.
Yes, over in the bookstore to the left. Thank you all so much for rocking with us on the New Media panel. I appreciate your time and all your questions.